Aloha mai kākou.
Aloha kako. And mahalo, Manu, for that intro. He always plays such beautiful music before we start.
Basically, it's a G7 and a C.
But it makes me want to hula.
Well,
Always. Yeah, there's not enough room. My hips got bigger. No enough room over here. But mahalo all of you for joining us for Midday Manaʻo with Manu and Mehana. Here sponsored.
We always do that because Midday, Manaʻo, Manu, Mehana. Let's all do it together. Okay.
Yeah.
Happy Kauvela, everyone. It's just we're into summer.
We are. We just had the solstice, right?
Yes.
And we celebrated, the longest day of the year. But and next year we'll maybe cover a story. Maybe we'll go out into the sunlight and do something.
Stonehenge in
Let's go to
England.
Stonehenge. Yeah, I know you have some interesting Manaʻo actually about solstice. Next time. This show is brought to you by the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement and also the Kaiser Permanente Community Benefit Fund. So mahalo nui to both the council, CNHA, and
I'm here
Kaiser.
actually during lunchtime because I work for commitment schools.
Yeah.
And Mehana is not only a dear friend, but a hula sister, Napuale Olikole Hua.
Oh yeah, no.
And Halau Nakamale Olile Hua, but also an Ohana related to, and also Hoa Kumu.
Yeah.
And so, but you know what? Me and her, we just crack it up. Yeah?
Right. We have a good time over here. And we hope you guys have a good time with us too, right?
Yes.
A little bit of everything. We try to sprinkle in there. But the purpose of the show is to discuss issues that are important to us here, right? Part of that way that we discuss things, like how we do in our living rooms or on a patio, right? Or down at the beach.
And we never mean to offend anyone. But
no, never.
We might rub somebody the wrong way. But aloha.
Oh yeah, no. Today's discussion that we wanted to have was the 4th of July, right, is upon us, right? And that celebration means different things to different people, right? Of course, the United States of America celebrates the 4th of July as its Independence Day, right? And it's huge celebrations all across the continental U.S. and of course here in Hawaii too. But the 4th of July means something a little different for us here in Hawaii, especially when we understand our history and the role that national holidays can play on the people, on the populace, on the lehu out there, right? So on July 4th in 1894, right, is the beginning of the Republic here in Hawaii, right? So the Republic, those people who overthrew the Hawaiian Kingdom, right, in 1893, a year later, right, on the 4th of July, right, promulgates the Republic, right? Now that was a turbulent time.
Government, after the overthrow, then to the Republic, and then the supposed annexation. And there's a reason for that. I'm not sure if we're going to even go there today. When I say supposed, it's an American law conflict, and then into the territory of Hawaii. So for our younger ones, especially who are watching, who don't know that the order of what happened in government, but July 4th exactly what was the year or the day that was, it's kind of in your face kind of thing.
It was, and so the lowering of the flags, right, of the Hawaiian flag. There's a great little piece of, it's only about 5 minutes long that I did with Laiana Wong. We do this talk story about the flag, about the High Hawaii, right? And its origins. Many people out there don't realize that the origins of the High Hawaii actually begin at the time of Kamehameha, right? And then move forward.
1816 in particular.
Yeah, and so when we have this pilina, when we have this connection to the High Hawaii, right? Look at you. I want to sing Hawaii Pono'i now that I've seen of like, that we have this pilina that goes back before the state of Hawaii adopted that flag into its governmental structure.
Yeah.
But the flag gets lowered, and then the American flag, more importantly, gets raised, right?
Yeah.
The American flag gets raised over Hawaii, at a time after the overthrow, and then the Republic.
Let's go back a little bit to talk about July 4th from the American perspective. When we live in a world where we are operating as an American entity, and we all studied history either in Kula Ki'eki'e, high school, or in Kula Nui, which is college. Independence Day on July 4th represents the American colonists who were formally separated from England. So there was a pilikia between those who left England, came across and settled the eastern seaboard, the 13 colonies, and you hear the American what is that, the anthem, the national anthem, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. So these kind of renegades from England were breaking away and now marked their own independence in Hawaii, which was not long after that. So that was 1812, or when Kamehameha was still alive. But up into the 19th century, you have, and I'm going to talk about Kamehameha's grandson, Lot Kapuaiwa, and he who became Kamehameha the Fifth, and he actually he was considered very much a traditionalist, and he was a little annoyed with the American population, the growing population in the 1870s, because they had these huge celebrations on the 4th of July, and he thought it was improper, and so he establishes in 1871, 6 months after his own birthday, December 11th, all the way to June 11th, that would be a national holiday honoring the memory of his grandfather, Kamehameha Pai'ea, Kamehameha Ekahi, to precede the summer holiday of the 4th of July, because he thought it was really almost arrogant, because while they were celebrating their own independence, they were plotting to steal ours.
Right. And so it sits between, the 4th of July sits in between two of our national holidays here in Hawaii, right, that we consider national holidays. One is Kamehameha Day on June 11th, and then the next is La Ho'iho'i'ea that happens on July 31st.
1843.
Right? Yeah, towards the end of July, that celebration occurs for us, right? And so this sits kind of right in the middle. So till today, it's an odd kind of fixture for people here in Hawaii. And then one of the things that we were talking about, we also here in Hawaii have modern day, pilina to the 4th of July with our canoe races.
Only because we like to go to Duke's in Waikiki. but you're right. So it's a little confusing, but I'm pretty much there every year. The McFarland Regatta, which is sponsored by the Outrigger Canoe Club, is a really fun race. But it is on the 4th of July, and for years and years and years, it was a whole red, white, and blue, hot dogs and apple pie kind of thing. And then the Outrigger Canoe Club, which also includes many Oiwi Hawaii, about 30 years ago, invited your kumu, Lena Ala Kalamahaini, my kumu, Robert Casimiro, and myself, and this guy, his name was Guido, who sang the Star Spangled Banner. It was fabulous. It's a hard song to sing.
It's hard.
On many levels. But anyway, so I would do the Oli, and Ala would do the Pule, and my kumu, Robert, does the Hawaii Pono'i. But it was a way to kind of blend, and not to make excuses for,
right?
But so the McFarland race, come down to Duke's. I'll be there at 7:45, I only at 8, and I'll be having breakfast at 8:05. Hell in Mike. But I want to say one thing about the conflicts, because I remember you mentioned my cousin Laiana Kanoa Wong. There was something happened in Kailua last year, and there was just all these American flags everywhere, and then the Hawaiians came out to put Hawaiian flags there, and they were ku'e'ia in the America. They said, you cannot put your Hawaiian flags over here. This is an American, expression. And I thought, here we are, and that would have been in 2021, that those kinds of things are still going on in our homeland. Right. So again, Independence Day, July 4th, speaks of, and back to 1776, and into the 19th century with American growth and the colonies and what have you, celebrating their independence from England and Hawaiian independence, which was guaranteed in 1843 in the end of November, when Timoteo Ha'alilio and Richards and that group went to France and England and America and signed the Anglo-Franco
so La Ku'oko'a.
La Ku'oko'a. And so, just so we know, and our world is what it is today, but just so we all are clear that in the family of nations, Hawaii was the only non-European nation, and I'm not even sure if America was recognized then in 1843 the way Hawaii was. And because of our group of patriots, including Timoteo Ha'alilio, that's a name that we all should remember, Hawaii was given the status and protected as an independent country before Japan, before China, before many countries around the world, and that was the ano of the Hawaiian representatives and their respect for one another and their tenacity.
Right. I think that was what was problematic to Americans at that time. Yeah. So to celebrate the 4th of July in Hawaii at the time, back in the 1890s and so forth, sent a clear message to both American citizens in Hawaii, right? It was defiant, right? And it also sent a message to Native Hawaiians, right? This is your future. This is what's coming around the bend, right? So what happens is in 1894, the Republic gets established, right, on July 4th. 1898, annexation happens, right, and we become under the United States, right? And then ensues, a few decades of engagement with the United States to the eventual losing, basically, of our of our independence, right? Kind of like that final stamp in 1959, right? Happens, that moves towards statehood.
An interesting thing, though, because we talk about La Ho'iho'ia, which was July 31st, 1843. Now, Kamehameha V was not fond of that holiday. And I'll tell you why. It's because it was associated with... what was his name?
Pole and
the English representative here. But anyway, down by Aloha Tower and Pakaka, and it was and what happened in 1843 in the early part of the year was this complaint by a British. What the heck was his name?
Well, Admiral Thomas finally came after later.
He corrected it.
Right.
But the fact that La Ho'iho'ia, which means de, La, Ho'iho'i is to return something to where it belongs, and then Ea is the sovereignty. So Kamehameha V wasn't fond because it had to do with Charlton.
Okay.
And so in the same year, however, so July 31st, and it's still, however, it is still a Hawaiian national holiday. And I remember Dr. Kekuni Blaisdell, who was a good friend of my mom's, and how they
reignited,
the popularity of that holiday.
And shout out to M.I. Winchester who carries that on today.
Yes, but it happens at Admiral Thomas Square, which is in an area of Honolulu, just mauka of the Blaisdell Concert Hall, called Kula o Kahua. And Kula o Kahua is where initially Kauikeaouli, Kamehameha III, his sovereignty was restored by Admiral Thomas, who was the head of the British Navy in the Pacific. And because and the humiliation that was coming, Kauikeaouli, Kamehameha III, and his wahine, Hakaleleponi Kalama, Queen Kalama, it was a horrible time. All of the Hawaiian flags earlier in 1843 were burned, were taken down, and the British flag raised everywhere. And it was absolutely not a part of the plan of England at all. But there was a namu complaint by this English representative about a land claim in the area around where Aloha Tower is today. At that time in 1843, Lili'uokalani was 5 years old. And she wasn't even Lili'uokalani yet. She was Princess Lili'ukamakaʻeha. She wasn't even princess. She was an ali'i, 5 years old. And 1843, 50 years later, when she's 55, the overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom, and she remembers when that our heir
was
restored when she was a young kid, and her Hanai sister was at that time 12 years old, Bernice Pauahi. And for her to experience the taking again of the sovereignty of Hawaii, and I know we're talking about the 4th of July, but she absolutely expected that the righteousness would be restored.
Manu, that's good. For most people don't realize that out there. They think that what Lili'u did in 1893 by taking that moment to, why didn't she fight back? Why didn't she, insist on war? It was because she was alive when an example of a foreign country, not only that, a foreign power came in, took over the country under and without the support of the motherland, of the home country, right? There was this rogue person, right, Lord Paulé, who came to Hawaii and did all of that, and then Admiral Thomas corrected that. She fully thought, right? There's an example of this. This is not how people behave, right? I have an example of that.
Legal precedents.
Right.
That was exactly it in 1843.
But Manu, I wanted to ask you. You said that because I never knew this, but you said that Lot Kapua'iwa did not like it. Why did he not like it?
Because it was because it was not a Hawaiian celebration per se, because it was instigated by foreign.
Okay, I see.
However,
I almost thought the same thing too when I started learning about it.
I told that to my cousin Laiana Kanua Wang, and he was all broken up. I was like, okay, cousin, it's okay. However, it remained, but Lot Kapua'iwa was really very, very different from his younger brother who ruled before him. The reason why his younger brother ruled before him, Alexander Liholiho, is because Liholiho was hanai by his uncle, Kamehameha III. So he was very different from Lot. However, and as you mentioned, Lili'u, by the time she is now Lili'u Okalani, that Okalani is added to her name by her brother, Kalakaua. But from when she was 5 years old, and all the kids were all from the royal school. They were all holding hands and walking down from kind of where the state capitol is to where Thomas Square is, and celebrating this restoration. And from when Lili'u was 5, and then 6 on July 31st, and then she was 7, and then she was 30, and then she was 40, and then she was 50, and every year that was, as well as November 27th, considered Hawaiian independence. And so there was no reason for her to not have expected that the right to her rule would have been restored. And that's a whole, So where are we today with that? And now we're talking about the 4th of July.
Right. So the 4th of July, we just wanted to give you guys some context, right? Because it's not as clear cut as many of us out there would think, right? Like, before somebody tells us that the 4th of July is problematic for people, we just get absorbed in the whole 4th of July American celebrations.
You know when annexation happened and actually overthrow 1893 and ensuing years. When Hawaiian flags were removed from public display, that is when the practice of kapakuiki, of Hawaiian quilts, where the Hawaiian flag and the phrase ku'uhai aloha, my beloved flag, were inside all of the Hawaiian homes because of the beautiful quilts that our kupuna made, but the Hawaiian flag literally was taken down. When you look at our High Hawaii today, and I'll show you my little flask over here. It ties back to Kamehameha. And Kamehameha was very worldly. I mean, he really was. He wasn't opposed to the idea of annexation to a country that would include Hawaii under his terms. But that is the ongoing pilikia, I think. But that incident I mentioned earlier about the complaints in Kailua about Hawaiians wanting to put Hawaiian flags in this public area where hundreds of American flags were put to acknowledge their Independence Day. Some things they just continue on. So for next steps, right? So why is it important, right? And why is it important for us to understand the context of the July 4th? But then also more importantly, why is it important for us as Hawaii, right? As Native Hawaiians to also embrace la ho'iho'i'ea, la ku'oko'a, la kamehameha, right? All of these holidays that have origins back in in a time of our kingdom, right? Why is it important today, right? Well, I'll tell one of the reasons is honestly is because many of us, our fathers, mothers, grandparents were in the army. They served in the United States military, especially after World War II. So December 7th, 1941, when Pearl Harbor is bombed, and now, so for people to look at the American flag or the 4th of July in a way that's almost disrespectful to our own ohana who served in the military, that's part of the ongoing.
I think that's a complexity, but I think once we understand the fullness of our history, we can take it in context. That the removing what happened in Kailua, for instance, the removing of American flags in that space, or putting in of the Hawaiian flag throughout that space, right? The offense is when there's such a display of American independence being here in Hawaii, is that there's a neglect of the oppression, the wrongdoing, the kind of detrimental impacts. Not only that the United States government did it one time, right? And again, the question of the illegality of the overthrow is still something that pierces many of us.
And even more so, annexation.
Right. And then beyond that, even today, the impacts of the military, for instance, right, today on the health and well-being of ourselves still living today. Take Red Hill. You can take unexploded ordnance, Kaho'olawe, Pohakuloa, the inability for us to go up to Makua because of the unexploded ordinance there too, and the cleanup that's necessary. Like, those are still things that are fresh for people concerned about our well-being.
All of us, though, and thanks to many organizations in Hawaii today, from the CNHA, the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, Kamehameha Schools, Alulike, the Ali'i Trusts, and all of that. There are many, many successes that we have achieved over time because of the values of our kupuna, particularly in the area of education, and of course health. Because you can be well educated, but if you're not healthy, then what's the point?
Right.
But let's remember that. So Queen Emma and Kamehameha the Fourth, for the establishment of the Queen's Medical Center. Let's remember King Lunalilo William Charles Lunalilo for the home to take care of the indigent and elderly Hawaiians, and Bernice Pauahi Bishop and her husband, Charles Reed Bishop, and her cousin, Ruth Ke'eli Kolani, who really set the foundation for education through Kamehameha schools, and many, many others. So we do, we're both Hawaiian studies majors. And I come, in fact, from when I was a graduate during the time of Haunani Trask, who was very politically minded and outspoken, but that was the va that I went through Hawaiian studies. And I learned a great deal. But we remember for our community is that we have to also consider what has gone on around the world. And what is most important to me, and I would think for you too, as a kumuhula, as a cultural person, is aloha aina.
Oh yeah.
Aloha aina is our deep-rooted love and connection and responsibility and privilege to call this our home. And so we take care of our resources. So that's when polluted water and bombing of an island considered a god.
Right. That's where the conflict comes in, and that's why these spaces, like the 4th of July, become conflicted. Right, they become not so easy. It's not just so easy for us to
now I
just
feel
accept.
bad going down to the
No, but that's the complexity
I like hot
of
dogs
it.
and apple pie also.
No, he doesn't. Not really.
But to make light of it.
But we don't have to negate one thing to appreciate something else, right? So in the wholeness of our complicated existence here in Hawaii, right? It is important for us to understand what these national holidays, what they mean, from the American 4th of July to our La Ho'iho'i'ea, to our La Kuoko'a. It's important for us to understand what they actually represent, and then perpetuate that.
I have a great deal of aloha for the high Hawaii, and like the Hawaiian quilts would say, ku'uhai aloha, my beloved flag. It doesn't mean I'm putting down other flags. It means I am uplifting the flag of my choice.
Right. And there's many out there who take on the complex work of dealing with the ramifications of all this that we talked about, right? In our healthcare systems, in our education, and so forth, because there are real ramifications and consequences to the actions that we're taking in our history.
And the problems we had 100 years ago, we still have them today.
Right. Oh, well, hopefully you gain some insight into...
A dark cloud is
a'ole.
But this is just, again, I mean, everybody has a different thoughts about this.
Right. But it's not bad to understand the bad side of our history. Talk about it. And read. So hopefully you embrace that concept. It's not bad to talk about the bad side of our history. Ignorance is not a space that we need to be in 2022.
But remember,
because there are dangerous consequences with ignorance.
The good things about our Hawaiian world, about the Olaho, the new rejuvenation, revitalization of our Olelo Hawaii. I've been speaking earlier to one of our own Ohana over here. Speaking of Hawaiian, sometimes we don't know what language we're in because we just sort of so. We have made a lot of progress.
So celebrate. I think that's what Manu's point is, that we have to celebrate the achievements that we have, but never ignore the things that are tough for our families to talk about, because that'll only perpetuate more ignorance out there. And that's one thing in 2022, oh my goodness, that's one thing our families are dying of. Like literally dying of.
We say the phrase often, aloha kekahi, kekahi, love one another, and kako'o, kekahi. And that's, for many, and getting right through or not even through yet, the ma'i ahulau, the pandemic, there's some real economic hardships that make what we're talking about seem almost mea'ole to some people. It's like, people, they just can't even, there's no more job, no more this, or what. So take care of each other.
Oh yeah.
Be kind to one another, and be generous, and And don't vala'au and be namu all the time. Some people do that.
You know, as in the wise words of Manu's cousin and my dear friend, Lai'ana Kanoa Wong, aloha is our superpower. And today we'd like to, end the show with that in your hearts and in your minds. Aloha is our superpower. A hui hou kākou from the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement and also our sponsors over at Kaiser Permanente. This is Manu and Mehana signing off for another episode of Midday Manaʻo. A hui hou kākou.
He aloha.